Welcome to the Equity Team Podcast, where we provide Sedona, Arizona real estate insight to help you thrive during your next real estate transaction.
All right, thanks for joining us for another episode with the Equity Team. Today is a very special episode, and of course, as always, we have William Hamburg here on my right, and on my left, we have Sedona Mayor Scott Jablow. Thank you.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Thank you for joining us. This is amazing. So the goal of this interview is to talk about short-term rentals and the impact on Sedona, and what do people need to know as far as doing things right, doing things by the book, following the rules, and making sure that we're in compliance. And then love to also just talk about kind of how things are developing in Sedona and how you feel about all of this. So we'll go ahead and dive in. So just to kind of kick us off, what are your feelings on short-term rentals? I know you have strong feelings on the topic.
I do.
Okay, so let's hear it.
To me, short-term rentals are like a cancer on the city.
Yeah.
To be blunt.
Yeah.
They really do. I mean, yes, we do receive a lodging tax from that.
Yeah.
But quite honestly, the amount of damage that short-term rentals do to our city isn't outweighed by the amount of tax that we receive.
Yeah.
So we have a loss of neighborhood, loss of community. We have a loss. The biggest issue is our workforce, and all aspects of our workforce have no place to live.
Yeah.
And the fact that you can go to any business, any office space in our city, any professional office, everybody is lacking employees. And while some of the people across the country are saying that, oh, wow, nobody wants to work, we can't get workers.
Mm-hmm.
We have the opposite. We have people who want to work here, and they have no place to live. And people who want to work here and contribute to our economy and our workforce shouldn't have to go live in their car in the forest with no place to live. And the only reason they're here is because they have a good job.
Yeah.
And most of those people were forced out of their living arrangement, whether it's a room or a rental house, long-term rental, because the owner turned it into an investment.
Yeah. It's valuable. It's important for investors considering purchasing in Sedona to kind of know what the Sedona perspective is on short-term rentals. And this kind of helps them to determine what direction we may or may not be going. Is your opinion on short-term rentals, does that kind of represent, the city of Sedona's take on short-term rentals, or is that, in terms of being adverse to them?
I believe, but I'm only speaking of my own opinions here today, but I would tend to think that the people, the public in Sedona, the residents in Sedona, share my views.
Okay, fair enough. So last year, there was a bill that didn't pass, an Arizona bill that didn't pass, that the attempt was to try to restrict short-term rentals to a percentage of the housing units in Sedona. Statewide. And it gave the ability for local municipalities like Sedona to embrace that and those restrictions and then to do that. And it didn't pass, but my expectation is to see something like that pass eventually, that we're going to see it on the state level. And if that does pass, is that something that Sedona would embrace?
Absolutely embrace it.
Yeah, sure. And
just to clarify for people to know about it, it would be a bill that would basically restrict the overall percentage of short-term rentals. And I think we're at about 17% right now.
We're cresting on 17%.
Yeah, which is very high.
That's high. Yeah.
Some of the highest in any city in Arizona.
That's true.
And we would be looking at a cap of whatever, maybe 20% or something.
Or a lot less.
I can't speculate on what that cap would be, except to say that whatever the cap is, any short-term rental that's in effect at that time remains.
Yeah.
Okay? There's some speculation around the city that some of the owners will lose their short-term rental.
Yeah.
That's not the case.
That's really important info for our audience to hear. That's really good. And, Colorado's done some interesting things, with some of those adjustments with restrictions of short-term rentals and things like that.
Colorado also has local control, which we do not in Arizona.
Yeah.
𝐬𝐮 program is pretty cool, and I know you're well versed on that because we've talked about it before. But yeah, you want to talk briefly just about that, because I think that's a cool program that the city kind of gives the option to, hey, if you don't do short-term rental, then we're willing to incentivize you and give you some money, compensate you for that.
Well, it's not exactly that. It's more of, if you have a short-term rental and you revert it to a long-term rental, we will compensate you. So that's the difference, as opposed to somebody having a room and turning around and saying, well, I'm going to, I want to be compensated for not renting it as a short-term rental.
Now, is that a cash payment, or is it a tax credit, or how do they receive the money?
I don't recall if it's not really a tax credit. It would be, I believe, a lump sum payment.
That's great. And they can learn more about that on the city website?
They could, yes.
That's great. And we'll provide a link as well. So for our viewers, there should be a link down below, and you can click on that and get that information firsthand. So currently, right now, many of our viewers are aware of this, and some are not. That right now there's already a short-term rental permit that's required, and this is a fairly new thing.
Yes.
So right now, and please correct me with any of this if I'm wrong, but I've got a thick skin. So right now, the requirement is you fill out an application to get a permit, and assuming it's approved, is it kind of a formality, or what's the process for getting approved?
Well, it's not a formality. Everybody would be approved as long as all the information is correct. Okay. We need to have a contact number. We need to actually see that there's a viable person there.
Yeah.
And we have to have, the contact number is very important. If not for the owner, there has to be a contact person that needs to be able to respond. And I don't know what the time frame is for response.
Okay.
But if there's a party and the neighbors complain, if the garbages are turned over, we have a javelina problem and a deer problem, where it's not uncommon where Tuesday, Wednesday mornings, people wake up and they see garbage.
That's right.
On the road.
Yeah.
So we need somebody to contact, and there has to be a response time.
Yeah. Okay. Good deal.
And we always recommend to our clients to don't hide the fact if you're doing a short-term rental. Go talk to your neighbors, whether they want it or not, and get to know them.
And that works really well.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm surrounded by short-term rentals, and I know all the owners. I only have one that's living out of the city, but they live in state.
Yeah.
And there's no problem contacting them whatsoever. As a matter of fact, it helps them to make sure that what they're doing is in compliance with the neighborhood. But it's a shame that those houses are there are no neighbors there. So, and I think the people who want to invest in here how would they feel wherever they live if they had no neighbors next to them for as far out as, maybe 10 houses? They're all investments. Is it about the money, or do they believe in the community? And what are they going to contribute in any city that they own in? And how would they contribute to their own city?
Mm-hmm.
And how would they feel if all of their neighbors in the neighborhood, or 50% of them, are gone, and they're living in the middle of a hotel?
Yeah, my feeling has always been that transparency is the best policy with this kind of thing. Now, with the current, especially because it's a fairly new thing with the short-term rental permit, how's that process going? Is it working out well? Are you having problems with it? I mean, is it?
Well, like everything new, there's always some glitches here. Yeah, last I heard, we're at 70% compliance.
Good.
And we're going to be sending out a notice within the next few days to advise people that they need to comply, because if they don't comply, there is a penalty. Yeah. There is a fine involved. They should not be advertising. They need to have a tax number on every ad, and we need to know who the people are. And if we don't know that, there is a fine.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I started to see that on Airbnbs. You see the TBT tax number on the listing, which is great.
It's okay if you don't know it offhand, because I'm catching you on the spot here. Do you know what that fine is offhand?
I don't recall.
That's okay.
Yeah. I know some of the fines that I was reading, and maybe there's been some changes on penalties. Was one night rental is your first fine?
Along those lines, yeah.
Like
yeah. It's something, it's substantial.
Yeah.
It's
You wanted this thing. You want them to be compliant.
I just want compliance. Whether it's things or not, I can't say. But we want compliance.
Yeah.
So, and it's also important what you mentioned before about knowing the neighbors. Part of the compliance is they have to post outside on their property. on a window facing out that's really visible, not blocked by a tree, contact information. They also have to submit a letter to their surrounding neighbors, okay, who they are, what they're doing, and if there's a problem, contact this number, whether it's them or their contact agent, to respond. And there is a bit of a glitch on, not for our side, but for the people to provide that information. So that might be a problem for them moving forward if they haven't done it.
And all that information is also on the city website?
It is.
Yeah, I noticed that the City of Sedona website has expanded recently. There's a lot of good info there. So that's awesome.
Well, like you said, you being transparent, that's exactly what we want.
That's right.
We always have one of that.
The FAQ, the frequently asked questions section is impressive. There's some really good information there. So, yeah, that's really important for everyone to check that out. Even if you don't own a short-term rental, it's good to be aware of what's going on.
Well, you want to know for your neighbors who do own it.
Yeah, that's right.
And that seems to be a problem right now. I'm being contacted by residents saying, my short-term rental did not contact me. I have not received it, and it's, 30 days past.
Yeah.
And these will be addressed. How, I don't know. That's up to your code enforcement, but they will all be addressed because that's, part of being compliant.
Mayor Jablow, in addition to being transparent and, of course, just following the rules, do you have any suggestions for owners of properties or people that are considering purchasing property as short-term rentals to help minimize the problems that you're seeing surface?
Sure. Not to buy.
Yeah.
Not to invest in Sedona. If that's their interest of coming to Sedona, think about their neighborhood where they are.
Yeah.
Do they want to add to a problem? We are not built as a city for the amount of short-term rentals that we have here.
Yeah.
As of last count, short-term rentals brought us close to 3,000 hotel rooms. We don't have the roads. We don't have the shops. We don't have anything to accommodate 3,000 additional hotel rooms. And they are not adding to a quality of life that nobody really, as a resident, can deal with.
I guess specifically what I'm asking about is and I definitely understand your perspective and I can appreciate that. But once people, let's say, for example, you have Joe Bob who purchases a property and he's committed to running it as a short-term rental and it's going to happen. Is there anything that Joe can do that can further help, as far as with issues that are surfacing? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Sure. Which is really done by the owners of short-term rentals who live in Sedona. In most instances, they've taken a house that was run down and they've beautified it. They've cleaned it up.
Yeah.
Inside and out.
Yeah.
They've invested a lot of money into it.
That's right.
Okay. So as long as they are providing a structure, I won't even want to call it a home because it's not a home anymore. It's a commercial business that people are doing. But if they want to, beautify it and maintain communication with the neighbors.
Yeah.
Because the last thing any short-term rental owner wants to have is a problem with our code enforcement who is not responsive. If they're not responsive back to the neighbors, these neighbors, our residents in the city, are not happy with it, and they will not be, let's put it this way, they'll be very vocal if somebody is not following the rules. So they could be good neighbors.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned, I have 2 locations near me. I know the owners. I've gone to dinner with the owners. I've had a relationship with the owners. That's the way it should be.
Yeah.
I'm not happy with what they're doing. It's legal.
Right.
But we have a relationship. So let's also add that as an owner, they should be providing to their guests the rules and regulations or common sense facts about being in Sedona, how to treat our natural resources, that whenever the guest wants to go into the forest, they should leave it better than when they found it. Yeah. They need to be sure to treat the neighbors appropriately, not to make noise. If garbage spills because of, like I mentioned earlier, a javelina or a deer may have tipped over the can, let the guest clean it. Just clean it up.
Instead of the wind taking it off into the...
Well, it adds to our drainage system. It blocks our drainage system. So there is a problem downstream, especially now we're in the middle of having heavy, heavy rains. All that trash that's in those dry washes in neighborhoods, they all will fill up and block and cause flooding.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of information that's put out by our Chamber of Commerce as far as places to go, things to do, and how to treat this very, very unique city that we call Sedona. And as a good property owner or a business owner, because that's what, let's call it what it is, just to educate their guests. And I know this, these two locations near me, they have a whole book and they have flyers of how to educate the people.
That's right.
And also, we are now embarking on a transit system, a microtransit, and a full trailhead system to get out of their cars. And the microtransit system, they'll be able to call someone on an app to come and pick them up, leave their car at home, use our transit system, and this way will help.
I love that.
Cut back on some of the transit.
I really love that. That's such a great resource for people.
It's all brand new in what we're doing here in Sedona.
That's amazing.
See the signs and the new buses. It looks great.
Right.
You know, there's one thing I'd even add to everything that you just shared. In Scottsdale, Arizona, there's an enormous problem with noise violations, late night parties, things like that. And one thing that's really important for us to do when we own a property that we're going to be renting out to other people is include something there about keeping that under control and, have reasonable hours and reasonable noise emissions, because it's just not right. It's not fair to the neighbors to experience that.
Thank you for bringing that up. I appreciate that. Noise is a problem, especially in Scottsdale. It's a little different. It's a noisier town.
Yeah.
Up here in Sedona, it's peaceful and quiet.
That's right.
So you should remind the owners that they want to make sure that their guests respect the noise ordinances.
Yeah.
And the last thing that they would want to have is a police officer knocking on their door saying, you have amplified music. You're having a party. There are no party houses. The fines for that are, a little aggressive. That would be a problem.
I think they should be aggressive.
And another thing that you will want to suggest to the owners that our dark sky ordinances are very aggressive here. We're 3,500 feet up in the mountains that we want to enjoy the dark skies, and so would their guests. But having bright lights shining out, they can have spotlights while they're being used. But in all honesty, they should all be turned off, and they want to enjoy it outside. That's great, but turn the lights off. You might also want to suggest on the same lines of dark skies, some of the properties being purchased by owners are older, and they're grandfathered in with the dark sky lighting. They don't have dark sky lighting. They have the older lights because they were grandfathered in. It would go a long way to the neighbors if they took all the exterior lights on their homes and turned it into dark sky lighting. And I could tell you, I, for one, would appreciate my neighbors doing that, and some do, some don't. And it shows that they want to be a part of the community in some way, and that goes a long way.
Yeah.
And it looks so much nicer.
Well, it looks nicer, but it really makes a difference if you have a neighbor with a spotlight or an outside unshielded light, and you want to look up in the sky. Or we have some people, they bring telescopes, and they can't see because they'll bounce back. So that's also contributing to a community. If they're going to do what they want to do, at least get that information out to their guests.
Yes, correct. That's a great incentive. I mean, when you have investors coming in, whether doing short-term rental or not, it is really nice when they come in and remodel a house that, we all have them on every street, but there's just that one house. You just hope someone buys it and fixes it up. And that is a great benefit. And I've seen that in my community where a lot of the houses are older. And people have come in, whether they do short-term, long-term, or live in it themselves. They've upgraded the landscaping, the paint, the roof, the lights, and it's a nice vibe, and everyone benefits because all of our property values increase in the neighborhood, which can be good and bad, but it's nice when you're living here long-term.
Right. So let's go back to what you were talking about, investing. You can invest and people can buy here, but the more that the rates are going up, it causes the values to go up, like you said. For people who want to retire here, that is the cost of housing. And it's all legal, okay? But I would rather see somebody come and be able to afford to live here and be a part of the community. The best Other suggestion would be someone who wants to invest in Sedona. Do they need to make the money of a short-term rental, or they could take that same house and put an employee in the house? Because, people can't afford to buy here to live anymore. That's a problem. And if your investors can see that it is a problem, it would be hurting them as well. Sooner or later, the bottom's going to fall out of the investment. And that's not a good thing either. So there's more than one way of investing in Sedona. Short-term rental, you want to strip the community of everything that we have. If they're happy doing that, that's too bad. Or they could put an employee in or a family in, where those families will have schools. School-aged children will benefit our schools. Employees for our stores. Those investors, yes, they're not going to make as much money, but in the long run, they're going to be doing good things. And maybe they'll come and live here in 10 years. So it's an investment that way. They're buying it now, but, who's to say what's going to happen in the future? But, when you invest, what does it mean to invest? Just that house, or you're investing into a community? What are you adding to a community?
That's right. I love that you said that, because it's not always about making money. And we talked about it in our last meeting, because it's, as realtors, we get these calls every single day. Someone calls and says, hey, I've got $1 million. I want to do short-term rental at Sedona. Right. First thing I say is, why? Why do you want to do that? You watch some webinar online and it tells you you're going to make all this money and it's so easy. Well, have you done it before? No? Okay. Well, there's other ways to make money. What's your goals? And once I get to know their goals, we've been able to identify multifamily properties, which is pretty rare here, as you know,
right.
New build opportunities, and potentially commercial opportunities. So there's other ways people can invest in the community and everyone can benefit. So thanks for highlighting all those things, that there's other ways to benefit, make a return. And long-term rentals is also, very stable. We always need long-term rentals. There's a huge demand for that as well.
Well, prior to the enactment of 1350, which created the short-term rental bill, Sedona had a workforce housing number of around 5%. And now it's way lower than that. So that's pretty sad. And it carries throughout the entire Verde Valley. So people should know what they're doing. And anyone who wants to invest in Sedona, I just encourage them to come to Sedona, come to the Verde Valley, spend a month here, see what we have to offer. Do they want to be a part of the degradation of our city, or do they want to be a real investor and invest in the betterment of a community?
Yep. And for our viewers that are wondering, we're going to have early April, we're going to have another interview, follow-up interview that's going to be focusing on not only long-term housing in Sedona, but also long-term rental incentive program that Sedona is running to encourage short-term rental owners to kind of transition over to long-term rental, more affordable housing options. So we'll be going into that as well. So I'm real happy. Yeah. You happy?
Thanks so much for your time.
Yeah.
Very welcome. Thank you very much.
And just to recap a couple of key points for our viewers. So if you either have a short-term rental here or you're looking at buying a short-term rental property here, make sure that you really beautify not only the home, but particularly the exterior. What other people are going to see. Beautifying that adds to the neighborhood, adds to the city of Sedona. Be very, very transparent with the neighbors and make communication and contact an easy thing. And whether that's going to be you or whether it's going to be your property manager, just ensure that there's a binder with really helpful information for tenants so that it encourages them to utilize Sedona the right way and have a healthy imprint on what's going on here. So thank you, Mayor Jablow. Really appreciate you. Really, really appreciate your help.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in to the Equity Team Podcast. To speak with one of our top agents, visit us at owninaz.com. That's owninaz.com. Or call us at 928-323-0031.